Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. It is mid-June, mid-July. Sunny here in Boston. I hope the weather is pleasant where everyone else is. First section of our meeting is announcements and highlights since the last meeting. Anyone have anything? Okay, sounds like not a lot of announcements. Next up is an open section for questions, issues, PRs. The intent here is to kind of have a place where people can bring things that they didn't think merited an agenda item. I don't know if anyone wants to bring up any PRs, issues, anything anyone wants to talk about in that context.
Is there a specific section? I can't see the agenda at the moment. Is there a section for the release?
I made an agenda item. That's the next one.
Okay. All right, cool.
Okay, well, moving on. Okay, releases. So I cut Osquery 5.13.0, but unfortunately we do not have a Windows cert right now. So yeah. Thor was going to look at getting that through, and then he bought a house. So that didn't quite happen. I'm not entirely sure how we want to go forward with that. I might be able to pick that up, but I haven't managed to in the last 2 months, so that's not looking great. Zach, how's your capacity?
Yeah, I am traveling this week, but it is something I can look into. In the meantime, like, should we use a code signing cert that like Fleet or Collide or Trail of Bits or someone has?
So I would certainly do it with Collide, but actually I don't know that I technically. So part of the thing that changed is that Windows code signing certs now need to be backed by hardware.
Right.
And at least for Collide, that's really baked into our CI/CD process. So just signing an Osquery binary is somewhat hard because I don't have easy access to those tools anymore, right? It's just part of our CI pipeline. I might be able to build something pretty fast just to get it done. I'm less sure if like Fleet has something kind of at the ready or what.
I don't remember at the moment, to be honest. I did see that there was some chatter about this new Windows code signing stuff. I'm not sure what we ended up doing about it. So I actually don't really know off the top of my head, but I guess it sounds like there's maybe not immediate opposition to using someone else's cert as a stopgap, but also we need to get the Osquery one fixed up.
I think that's true. My guess is
Did
that,
you and Thor like get an understanding of the timeline that it would take to get a new one issued?
No. My experience is that it's on the order of 1 to 4 weeks, depending a little bit.
Okay.
You know, mostly so the process for this is we find a vendor. Well, so they're technical questions, right? We figure out the technical means we would like to handle key management in, which vendors support that. And then we have to go through identity verification with that vendor. And then we can get a cert. So there are some unknowns on how long each of those things can take.
Yeah. What does Collide use? Are you happy with it?
Collide is happy with what we're using. We could certainly look at copying what Collide does into what Osquery does. I'd have to look up which vendor we use. It might be SSL.com. I can't remember.
Okay. And
Collide,
do you have it set up into like a GitHub CI process? Because it seems like it'd be ideal that we'd get it there.
Yeah. So the way Collide works Collide is heavily, we use GCS for all the cloud stuff. So what drove our choice in vendors was who had effectively an HSM level integration with Google Cloud KMS.
Okay.
So our key management is stored in Google Cloud, and we use a Google Cloud distributed plugin to the SSL tool, to Microsoft's SSL tool, and we have that all kind of baked through Google Actions.
Okay.
And
through Google Actions. So sorry,
not
GitHub
Google.
Actions,
I'm sorry, GitHub Actions. Wrong G.
Okay. Yeah.
GitHub Actions does all of the work, and the secret is held in Google, and there's some, identity hand waving back and forth.
Okay, got it.
There
we do have a Google org for Osquery already, so we could potentially do something like that.
Yep.
Okay, but it sounds like it's worth me doing a bit of research here and trying to see what the best option might be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you're up for it, that'd be great. Other
okay,
options...
so I'll do some digging and I'll report in the core channel over the next couple of days. Okay. And I'll also check in with our team and see if we've got a cert that we can use.
Yeah, I can see how easily we can sort of sign it. My guess is that if we think about customers downloading it, they're probably going to recognize Collide's name, then Fleet's name, and then Trail of Bits name, and probably anything other than those three will start sounding real sketchy.
Yeah. It for a long time it was signed by just Nick though. So yeah. Okay. So this makes sense.
I'll see if I can sign it. Yeah. No,
okay.
Awesome.
I'll
see what we can do in here. Yeah, that's what I got on the 5.13 release. I have not uploaded it into the Collide beta fleet. But probably I could. Probably true for the fleet as well.
We also haven't, I think, just because we're waiting. We're waiting on the Windows code signing, but sounds like maybe we shouldn't be waiting on that, or should figure out something else. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Folks, I have to go through airport security. Anything that you need from me in the next 10 minutes or so? Otherwise, I'm going to pop off and pop back on if you're still around.
Probably not. The other agenda item is about S3 nonsense. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll rejoin here.
Ping core and ping me for identity stuff, because there's a bunch of that I have some notes on and that you'll need me for. So,
okay, sounds good.
Figure that out.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. If you're gone, then goodbye. And if you're still here, I'll see you soon.
So the other thing that I put down, I've mentioned in the past. So there's some unknown users that download the packages directly out of our S3 bucket. We pay for that, so I'm kind of inclined to turn it off and see who complains. I don't know that there's much more to say. I think I've raised this. I mentioned this a couple of months ago, and people just seem generally in favor. So I'm floating it again and saying, yeah, I should probably get on board with that.
Yep, that makes sense.
That's really all I have to say.
Sorry, maybe a random thing that I remembered about releases. It seems like we don't have 5.12.2 on the website, and probably, again, Windows signing may be related now.
No, the reason we don't have 5.12 on the website is it was committed with a table spec in the wrong place, and that broke all of the automation tools.
Oh, okay. Whoa.
So in response to that, I added a lint job that will catch that in the future. And I manually pushed one of the things up. I forget what. So I could probably recreate the manual website update nonsense and get 512 out. I haven't done it yet, so clearly signs point to not so good. And the 513 would certainly be fine. So the only reason it's not on the website is because it's got a spec for Darwin Windows or Win Darwin instead of Mac Win. And that broke the sort of spec compilation code paths. So that
I'm kind of surprised that like even compiled and built, but maybe the checks weren't extensive.
I'm not, because the thing that triggers the table generation from the specs had the path. It was explicitly added to CMake with that path. So it made it through spec generation. And then the website has a narrower view of what those definitions are. Yeah, I think I manually fixed it for like one of the 512 versions and then didn't do it for 512.2. Yeah. Stefan, I'm adding notes about the 512.2 release to the website.
Yeah, I only remembered because I was trying to find. I thought there was an issue, but I recalled someone asking or mentioning.
Someone asked in the Osquery website repo. I replied there, so yeah, it's why I knew the answer top of mind. Yeah, so this is the PR that fixed that particular typo. Was in that PR. I'll try and do it manually, I guess. Because I know I should have done this. So okay. Yeah. I think that's our agenda items. People want to talk about anything else? Mike, I see you're here. You want to talk about any PRs?
I do have a couple PRs that I have recently updated. The one for the Linux block devices and disk encryption, as well as the processing and constraints all at once. I just pushed a couple of commits up to that one, and I'm updating some notes there. So I don't know if we really want to discuss anything there, but yeah.
This is that one, I think. Oh, I'm sorry, not that one. I clicked the wrong PR link. That one. What Micah, do you where is this one? I think Stefano had some requested changes? I guess you've probably made them all.
Yes. I addressed all of the previous comments that Stefano left on the Linux one.
Okay. Stefano, any chance you're in a place where you can review 8200?
I think I'm not sure. I have some hours this month, but I'm not sure if I can this week. Probably. Actually, let me double check one thing. Sorry. Yeah. I would say next week I can give that an additional round of review.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And Micah, do you know what you need on 8263? That one felt like a little bit of a harder one.
Yeah, I think I have a good strategy for it now. I found that there was an old optimized column option that wasn't being used anywhere, and it really fit the purpose of what I'm trying to achieve with this PR. So I've repurposed that to kind of allow for this in constraint optimization on various columns. So it should be in a good place to at least review. I'm going to continue running tests because there's a lot of table changes, just overall adding that option in. I shouldn't say a lot of table changes, just a lot of spec changes.
So there's some old column option for optimized.
Yes.
Do you know what it was ever for?
So I tried looking at the history. The last time it was at least added was 6 years ago in a massive PR that was just like updating the entire code base. So I don't really know what its purpose was. The description that went along with it, though, pretty much fits exactly what this in constraint optimization is by description. So I don't know if this was like prior art towards this or not, but it's
Probably
not being
not.
utilized anywhere. So.
Yeah, I wonder what the goal of optimized was. You say it appeared in a giant rewrite?
Yeah, at least the last history on it.
Yeah, that means Zach's the one to kind of ask about it, maybe. So I think one of the things that's awkward here is that's also what index and additional mean.
Right.
So I'm not wholly sure what optimized means that index or additional does not.
So, well, index. Yeah, obviously it's still a valid question. I don't exactly have an answer, but yeah, mostly in index, I would see them, first of all, as a way to pass the constraint to the virtual table, but then again, index says that rows are unique, while additional simply creates a partition, so permits you to return a totally different set of rows depending on that additional value. And
right.
also, well, internally change behavior, basically. So, yeah.
Right. And then just looking at Micah's diff, it looks like we also sort of have an implicit thing for path when path is required. Because like it looks like we don't set index or additional on path when path is a required field. And I wonder if that's fishy.
required on itself, like index additional and require means that the column will be in the primary key.
Right, but I wonder if like
Yeah.
path is a subset of additional. Like does it ever make sense to have path and not have path included? And does it ever make sense to have required and but not additional? Or like is the nature of required always
No.
trigger additional?
Yeah, there is some overlap in that sense. Well, let's say that it's slightly different, maybe because path, it's more like it's just working, filtering the data technically, while additionally it's really changing the behavior of the table. But at the same time, yeah, required already does what the other do, basically.
But it's not just filtering the data, because like if we have something as required,
Yeah, I mean,
like I think
no,
about
I
it,
mean path itself. So if you provide that constraint path, it's filtering. Now, then yes, required as an option works to change the behavior of the like syntax validation, let's say, of the query. Yeah.
yeah. So index means that something is a primary key. Additional means it's not a P key, but generate needs it.
Well, it's still put into a primary key, though. It will be part of the primary key.
I thought that was an implementation detail and not.
In what sense? I mean, yeah, I mean yes, but like in the end, it is in the primary key if you mark it.
Okay, so additional. I'm sure this made sense to me at some point in time. What's the difference between additional and indexed?
Well, that index alone, again, index alone should. There are potential. I don't recall exactly where they are used. There are potential optimization there because, again, SQLite knows that the data in that row is unique, and so each row extracted with an index in it are different, are all different. Or well, the column index itself contains values that are always different from each other, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which are, yeah. While additional does not have that guarantee. And I think we also have to consider that internally SQLite refilters what we return from the virtual tables.
Right. And there's this other bit of complexity where we don't pass everything down to the generate functions. We only pass things that are index, additional, and require.
Yes, because that's what you can, I think that what you can get from SQLite. And again, I think it's why we are putting them also into the primary key, because the values can only be, actually, no, wait, scratch that, because you still have the constraint.
Yeah. Just hearing this and Micah's discovery of optimize makes me think we need to sit down and stare at these a lot harder. Because I feel like the last time I stared at them, I thought I understood them, and now I can't remember because I don't understand them today. I don't know if you feel like you understand them.
Sorry, which one? You mean all these attributes?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand them, but obviously when it's sometime like that I don't look at them, I don't recall all the details again, and probably should keep notes, just probably. But yeah.
Because like I feel the thing I'm not understanding is whether we need optimize.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I haven't looked at what. Let me read for a moment the documentation because I haven't yet looked at it.
Well, I know the docs have been out of date, but I think they're correct.
Oh no, yeah, I'm looking at the PR, which adds optimize. So if the presence column in the procedure. Okay. I see. I mean, so one of the thing I know is that by default, or almost always, SQLite only passes a single constraint value. Like if you have a constraint on a column, and then again, but that column has been constrained with multiple values, SQLite always loops on them and calls multiple times our table. So
yes,
it's similar to the index the join on the index case. While again, what it could do is instead of like querying the outer table, taking all the values in the index columns, pass the whole array of values to the virtual table, to our table, calling it only once, then our table can provide and loop through that and provide a huge response back. That might be an improvement in speed in some cases, but it doesn't do that since the join is implemented as two nested loops, and so a single index value is provided every time, and so that results in multiple calls. And so as far as when the optimization with the in is similar to this logic with the or the problem, the original problem is similar to this join issue, because again you had multiple values in the in constraint, so you had a list of constraints for that column, and it would loop each constraint value in it, calling each time multiple times the table. Instead, now with the improvement, it will pass all of them together so that the table is called only once.
Right. I feel like the thing I'm trying to sort of, there's a bunch of stuff I feel like I don't quite understand anymore. One of them is how these options affect things, right? Because there's these bits around, does this column indicate that there's only one? Is this column a unique index? Which is not quite the same as an index, but that's what we called it apparently, right? Is this data unique? Does this data change the way generate works? Right? And if it changes the way generate works, then it has to be in the P key. Otherwise, you'd get it different. Otherwise, the two would overwrite each other, right? It has to be in the P key if it changes the way generate works. And then there's sort of required, and things that are required are maybe sometimes indexes and maybe sometimes additional. I don't know if they're ever neither. I think if they're required, then they must be additional, but maybe sometimes they're unique, but not always. And then I guess there's this idea of should we pass all of the constraints once if we can, if SQLite can optimize it like in the in context. And maybe what I'm not sure of is, are there places where we would want index or additional, but we would not want optimize, or do they always imply each other? And if they always imply each other, then we don't actually need the other flag.
Yeah, when I was going through this, some of it was a little confusion unraveling. There are places where required is used and no other column option is used for that.
But
One
I bet
example, curl
that's
search.
because I'm looking at your diff and I can see that almost everywhere we have path,
Mhm.
then we set required, but we don't set additional. But I think additional must be implied because otherwise it would never work.
Mm.
Right? Because like part of the goal of additional was to indicate that the column had to be passed to the generate function in the query context.
Mhm.
And if you don't pass a required column into the generate function, you're not going to get data.
Oh, so okay, there is an additional layer that I think we are not necessarily using or looking at, but the cacheability of the table. And so some attributes disable the fact that the table can be cached, the table results can be cached in memory. I'm not sure when was the last time we actually tested caching for tables. I don't even recall if it's hard coded for some or. But yeah.
This is I think the caching defaults to false and you have to set it to true. And it's not clear to me how it works or how long that cache lasts for.
Yeah, well, probably for like required. So I see that it becomes non-cacheable if there is any column with required, additional, or optimized, because probably, although yeah, I don't fully understand. It's a partial view, sure, every time, but yeah, not sure why. Maybe it's not able to key the cache over which column and which value specifically has been used for additional. So maybe that's the reason. Like if you use a constraint that is additional, each value of that constraint can generate totally different values. So you would have to cache each result under the specific value you passed to the additional column.
Yes, but I feel like that's halfway to what the primary key is, in a sense.
Well, I wonder if what it caches to be. I don't know if it is caching everything basically again. While with additional you don't know what everything is. So with the index it's filtering, but when you query with select star, you know everything, what everything is. When you have additional, you don't, because select star won't give you, like, again, yeah, you need specific values for additional, which are not in the table necessarily.
Right. But that's a little bit what I mean by it's halfway to the P key. Anything that shows up in the P key should also show up in a cache key. Not quite, but like an additional column varies the data you get back. QED, it has to be in P key and it has to be in cache key. But whether or not the cache code, I've never read the cache code.
Yeah, sort of the same, at least not how it interacts with the attributes.
Yeah, I think that index, additional, and require need more clear writing. And it's not clear to me that there are times we would use optimize without one of those three attributes.
We wouldn't use optimize without one of them. No.
Yeah, and I feel like each of those, and I'm not sure there are times we would use those without optimize.
There are places, at least currently, where we couldn't apply optimize on some of them. I'd have to do more table generate work to fix that.
Okay,
So iterate the context.
So optimize is almost just a way to allow us to support in constraints without changing everything in one go.
Yes. I had before finding this optimized flag did change some of the table generate, so I could take that out if we want to only keep it on the optimized change. But I did change a couple of the table generates already.
It doesn't seem wrong to me to like fix the table generates to behave the way we think they should behave. So you're sort of defining a little bit of a route where we say, when we know a generate can handle being past multiple constraints, we also set optimize.
Yes. Yep.
It kind of makes sense to me. Sort of feels a little bit like it becomes kind of a short-term flag in an ideal case, right? We use it, and then at some point we declare everything as optimized and we stop using flag.
Yeah, I will consider it something internal.
I feel like that approach makes some sense. How do other people feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me to add some way to differentiate those tables that right now cannot support multiple constraints at once. Otherwise, they would work. They would not work correctly. So.
So I see, Micah, that you've got a relatively large diff that updates a lot of containers, or excuse me, updates a lot of tables. Have you, at least mostly validated that each of those works, or at least read the code and been like, yeah, it looks right?
Yeah. I've been going through and like testing the tables on each platform. There's quite a few, so it's been like taking a bit of time to go for each one with like various tests. And I haven't been able to like test the Azure server because I don't have one of those set up.
Okay.
But it looks like I didn't actually change that one. So never mind.
I think that makes sense to me. I feel like I probably have to spend some more time with this diff, but like at a theory level, using optimized a little bit as a short-term internal flag just to make the rollout easier makes some sense.
So I I was reading the code for how it was constructing the SQL queries was reading existing code for how it was treating attributes and constructing the SQL query to create the table. One additional thing I see is that there is a rare case where you can have only additional marked columns in a table and no index. And so that is different. And so this is a difference, an additional difference between index and additional, which makes so that, yeah, the whole row is the unique row. So basically, the entire all the columns get into the primary key in that case.
I remember that use. I remember that corner. My memory is that we do that because we don't have anything better to do.
Yeah.
A good example of that one is the PID with namespace for the Linux schemas.
Mhm. Right. Right. Yeah. And obviously, index. Every time we have an index, we disable row ID. But yeah, otherwise, row ID would be like if it were exposed and we could actually query it, that would be the primary key. But yeah, we cannot. Or at least it would be weird to use it.
Now that you say it, I remember that comment.
But yeah, definitely it will be good if we can have written all of these cases and not just having to look into the code base every time.
Yeah, it feels. I think one of the things that always stops me in documenting this well is to understand what it all means. You have to understand the complexity that can only be represented in code. So there's some amount of like, how do you document? Like, so can we find ways to document it to remind ourselves about that nuance? And I'm kind of wondering if there's like a table that we can make of like, this is the effect in the generated code when you set this option, you know, and because I think it's not one-to-one.
I don't know, I see it in levels, like searching for where the logic is and where you have to look in the code to even know that the thing exists already takes time. So even having documentation that says that it exists is a step forward.
Mm-hmm.
That particular logic exists. Then maybe it can get out of date, but still you can then check if it's still in sync or not. And yes, I think we can make it is possible to make examples with data and show where each of that attribute changes the behavior of the table and why they exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think we're saying that maybe the optimized approach Mike is taking in 8263 is okay. We need more docs, and we want to review the PR. People want to say anything else about this PR?
Not this PR, just I would really like they added also a way to pass the limit value to the tables. I know at least the last time I looked, this is not currently present. So
Yeah, I think we did something. We built a secondary limit for like the unified log table, like max rows or something because of that limitation.
yeah, but obviously having it integrated is slightly better. It will still require having to go through all the tables and support it. But still.
Yeah.
Maybe another random thing on the optimization side. I mentioned that SQLite still filters your results even if you are passing values. I wonder where if it makes sense sometimes to actually, because I know that there is an option to say don't filter it again, but at the same time I know that it won't. At least I think it will not check if the value is correct. So, like finally, in some cases, we may have had the table that would return slightly wrong data, and that either would correct it or catch catch issues.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
There is SQLite would support something like that?
Yes, there is a let's say Boolean flag, whatever you can enable.
Yeah. I've seen that would be one of the things that I keep wanting in the extensions, right? So I write extensions in Launcher, and they often take big inputs as where clauses. And I have to echo that back in the output, otherwise SQLite filters it. But they're sort of just additional feelings, right? It's like, oh yeah, get this information, apply this XPath filter to it. So, but there's no, I don't really want to do all that work. So
Can you, if you call them hidden?
We don't support
Does that
options in the, there's no options in the extensions.
Oh, in extension. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There might be at the thrift level, and we just didn't plummet through the SDKs. I haven't gone digging enough.
Yeah, I don't know. My guess is it would require some work on like the core side and the SDK side.
Yeah, I'd love for us to do that, mostly to get hidden, but it's never quite bubbled up. It's like all these interesting corner cases that come up when you use where clauses to specify behaviors.
Yeah, even maybe the pit with namespace was one where, like, it's fine maybe to give it to the SQL query, but you're not particularly interested in seeing it in the results. There are also other other optimization. I know that, well, just to talk about optimization, we use, in some places we use, well, I saw that particularly on macOS tables, we mark which columns are used, or well, which columns are queried through the query. And so the table itself only gets data for those columns instead of getting them all and then having SQLite filter them. So actually, this is partially connected to that additional bit I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm randomly mentioning them just to, like, I don't know if anyone was looking to was wanting to optimize any particular table where a column, getting a specific column, is particularly heavy, and that column they are not interested in. That's one option that exists.
Yeah. Is there other stuff people want to talk about? If not, we are about at time. So should probably end it. Thank you all, especially for the rousing discussion of filter constraints and table options. Definitely a fun corner. But seriously, thank you all for your time, code, and knowledge.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See y'all in
Thank
2
you.
weeks.
Bye.